Tech Type Podcasts. This is a very special episode running off the back of WWDC. My name is Simeon.
Hey, it's Ben.
I'm Dale.
So here in Australia, last night, or this morning, in fact, at 3 a.m, I was up bright and early listening to WWDC.
You Apple fanboys?
Oh, look, I had to, mate. Had to get up for it. So a bit of an interesting event this year, but a little bit of background on WWDC. So it's the Worldwide Developers Conference from Apple, and it's meant to be for all the developers around iOS, iPadOS, tvOS, watchOS, and macOS. So this is their software suite, and it's for developers to see what the newest things coming to these platforms are. So yeah, it was a bit of an interesting event because there was no one there. It was interesting to see how they were going to do it this year because they normally just have it in the Steve Jobs Theatre, and there's all these journalists and the Apple employees, and they sort of, have crowd interaction a little bit, but there wasn't, obviously, because of this social distancing.
Did you like the new format, or the new format? Did you like the format that they put it out in, or you were kind of a bit disappointed?
Look, I was a little surprised that they sort of still did it the same. So they basically started off with Tim Cook, who's the CEO of Apple, talking directly in the Steve Jobs Theatre. Yeah. And then, like they normally would do it, and then they threw it off to Craig Federighi, who is the head of hardware development at Apple. And they basically threw it off to him, and instead of like him coming onto stage in the theatre, they went upstairs, and he was in a different location. And I think they were kind of going for this vibe of we are still social distancing even ourselves. So as they went through things, they sort of split it up, which I thought was very interesting. But I didn't mind it. It's always been the same for me. I've obviously never been to one of the events. It's always been live streamed. So it's always the same experience. But it was a pre-recorded one that they just released at the time. So it was interesting to see the changes they'd made versus doing it live. But it was a good event. So they started off by discussing iOS, as they always do, the new iOS 14, and some new features in there. I'll just run down the list quickly. So the big ones were they added widgets. So they've pulled those from your notification area to be able to put onto the desktop directly.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, look, a couple of these ones, they have been influenced possibly by some other operating systems. Just put it there. And so it will allow you to get some more information through these apps without actually having to open them, along with some smart widgets that will change throughout the day. So you might wake up and you'll have your news, and then throughout the day it will change to some of the weather, and then it might change to your shopping list as you're driving home, and then it might show you your active goals throughout the evening, telling you to maybe go for a run. And then they also added another one that might have been pulled from a certain other operating system. They pulled in what's called an app library. So it's allowing you to get rid of all your other pages and your multiple pages, and just have maybe 2 pages of apps that you mostly use, and then have a library of other apps sorted by categories such as social media, or recently added to your phone.
So they've taken a slightly different approach with that, haven't they, compared to some other operating systems? Their
way of doing it is having all of your apps on your screen and then adding them to this library as you don't want to use the apps, versus some of the competitors, Android, for example, who you start off sort of with a blank screen and then add apps from, they call it the app drawer, but the same thing to your screen.
Yeah. Do you think that kind of fits into their whole ethos of, I think we've talked about this maybe before, that, the Apple kind of looks at it how the customer's not too sure what they really want, so we just give it to them, instead of the more Android approach of letting the customer kind of decide on their needs and how they want to set it up? Because a lot of it's pre-generated with them, isn't it? They've got like their suggested list and like recently added or something.
Yep. So in theirs, it's the suggested, which is their AI algorithms. Apparently, are predicting what apps you might use next, along with this most recently added, and these are at the top of the app library. Look, I don't know if you guys have seen it really a lot. I'm not sure if you boys watched the event or not, or have seen some articles come out throughout the day, but I just think that it's the wrong way of doing it. I know maybe it's because Android has done it one way and these guys are now doing it the opposite way, but I just feel like Android did it correctly and a fair few years ago, pulling apps from your app door onto your home screen, and because Apple's going the opposite way, it just feels like they're doing it the wrong way because it's been done this other way for so long. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, like I was kind of talking about before, like it kind of fits into Apple's whole, what's the right word? The whole way they treat their customers, not necessarily in a bad way, but more like a lot of people use their products who maybe aren't quite as tech savvy and kind of, they just want it to work.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to go through the whole process of setting up their apps. They just want them to be there. They just want them to work, and that's it. Yeah. And I think they've implemented that really well. With, like you said, their AI kind of draws and having everything kind of preset almost.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
It fits into the whole ethos of here are your apps. They're just going to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
no, I like it.
You like it? Yeah, look,
I think it looks good. I mean, as someone who's gone from Android to iPhone recently, I don't really. I don't know. I found I don't care so much for the for the extreme customization.
Oh, my soul!
I felt like when I used my old phone, I was just fiddling around with it for the sake of it. It wasn't too important.
Yeah, it wasn't actually helping you.
That was widgets for the one thing I missed. So I think that's finally something.
So they are there. They're not
caught up on.
Quite done the same. They basically just take up the spot of 4 apps or 8 apps, depending on how big you choose to pick the widget. And so you do that through the selection of, they call it the jiggly menu. When your app icons jiggle, you can tap and choose to sort through this list of widgets that you have available. So just sliding on, they've added some other features in Messenger. So this is about pinning some messages that are the most important to you to the top of your list. So you'll always have them at the top. So maybe your partner or your best friend or whoever you choose, really, your boss maybe, is always pinned at the top of your rankings, as well as changing some things in the group. So now you can tag, comment within a group thread.
Oh, you can mention people. Like adding someone.
Yeah, and so you can sort of only be notified when you're mentioned in the group chat, as well as some new search features in there, which again, it's
inline replies.
Oh, yeah, inline replies. So that's sort of what they've added to Messenger, as well as, and this is sort of like the last big thing they talked about with the iPhone is, and they call it app clips. It's basically this idea of using both NFC and this version of QR codes, Apple QR codes, to just use a small section of an app. So say you need to use one of these, mobile scooters that are quite popular around the place these days. You can scan the code, you can tap on the top of the scooter and pop up and use just the payment part of the app. So you don't have to download the app. You don't have to install the app. It's maximum of 10 megabytes. So your phone will be able to instantly pop it up without you having to download the whole app ecosystem. And then using their Apple login, you won't even have to create an account. You just log in with your Apple ID.
That's really good.
Yeah. So the amount of apps you're cutting down on, and so I'm not quite sure how far this extends, but some of their demonstrations were using things like restaurant booking. So you just book through this, and then it will be in your app library for a little bit, but if you don't use it for the rest of the day, disappears. And then when you need it again, you go search for the app, you bring it up, it pops back up, and so it's there. And it's a way of not cluttering your phone with all these apps you really don't need if you're just using them once, as well as discovering new apps. So this ability to just use part of the app and then from there extend through to using the whole app.
And it gives you the option to have a bit more privacy, which is, I don't know, might not be something ultra appreciated now, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, look,
that's fantastic.
Adding that those privacy features in there are really nice. But along with some tiny other things they added across both iOS and iPadOS, so making Siri small, so it doesn't take up your entire screen, as well as phone calls as they're coming in just take up the top bar to allow you to stay more immersed in your phone, your iPad as you're using them. But so that's basically a bit of a quick overview of iPad and iPhone OS. I think it is a necessary update. I think it was more than I presumed they were going to do. In the past, they have done a lot less and called it a lot more. But that's some pretty big features, especially from Apple.
I know. It's basically the features that I think were, holding it a bit far back from Android, and it's still providing, it's providing a lot more privacy options than you get on Android. It's still not quite as customizable, but it's giving you all the functionality that you might have been missing. I really like it.
So a lot of these features, obviously we've talked about it a lot, and a lot of other people have talked about it, that they're nothing new. I think it's pretty obvious that a lot of these features have been available for a whole lot of years on Android and Facebook.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's taken them so long to get what are sometimes pretty basic features onto their device? Do you think it's just a part of their big strategy, or it's actually taken them
I think they were. I think they were just victims of having small screens for so long. Because if you think back to iPhones like the iPhone 4, 4S, 5, they were very small screens, and they weren't. They were high res in pixels, but they weren't ultra high res. And when you're comparing them to like the 1080p. 1440p like Android phones with bigger screens at the time, it sort of makes sense. They thought they didn't want to clutter up the home screen with widgets, I reckon. But for a while they've had bigger screens now. So I reckon it's maybe a couple of years late, but before, so a little bit late, but it makes a lot more sense now with the bigger phones.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, especially around the widgets. I think some of these other features could have come a long time ago.
I think absolutely they could have.
Taking up my whole screen.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's this whole thing about Apple. It's about perfecting things, and if it's not broken, don't fix it, sort of idea. And I think part of it is probably because in the last few sort of iOS updates, really like 11, 12, 13, those sort of ones, there was not a lot of big features happening. They were nailing security, they were nailing down the speed, they were getting you more efficient, they were doing all these things, but they really weren't pulling these big features. And I think now it's kind of like, what's drawing people to our phone? And so now they're like, okay, we'll put these out. They're easy to do. They can nail them because they've looked at other companies doing them and they now have perfected them. I don't think we're ever going to get the answer why Apple does things a year late, 2 years late, 3 years late, possibly 10 years late now. But it's this whole idea that, Android builds the wheel, invents the wheel, and then Apple perfects it. it's just this roll on. And look, I haven't particularly missed widgets. I haven't, because I've never used them. But now they're there, I'm sure I'm like, oh my God, I've wanted these forever. But they haven't been there till now, so I haven't been able to use them.
I mean, they sold plenty of phones without them. So.
Yeah, exactly. They really they can put anything they want in these devices, and it will make no difference. But
they could ship just a plain aluminium box.
And
it'd be the biggest selling phone.
It'd have no ports.
Just imagine the phone.
Yeah,
couldn't drop it in the toilet and get it wet or anything. So perfect to me.
No.
So
the widgets are so good. It completely replaces the weather app. Like,
yeah, pretty much. I don't
something like that. It replaces calendar. It replaces opening your weather. It's just always there. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how some developers start implementing some apps with widgets and stuff built in. But so iPadOS is now its own OS, and it has been for a couple of years now. But it's had its update as well. Same features, small Siri, all that has come along with it, along with some widgets and things like that. They've also added Scribble, which is the ability to, on any text field, use your Apple Pencil to write and it will automatically turn it into text, which is similar to some of the stuff they're doing on the Samsung Galaxy Note, some of those features, as well as having the ability to use react with handwriting like it's text. So you can handwrite out handwriting, a line of pages of handwriting, and then copy and paste that handwriting and move it somewhere else, or turn it into text, like text document text, as well as being able to space it and add spaces between your handwriting and move it around and make it react like text would. So there's some very smart features in there, and some small redesigns of some of the apps, bringing some of these sidebar features to some of the photo apps and stock apps. But really, everything they've updated on iOS, they've also updated on iPadOS. So nothing majorly new there. Along with the Apple Watch, they've done some small updates. Well, I say small. They've added sleep tracking, which has been a feature everyone's wanted for a while, but does beg the question of, when do you charge your Apple Watch? If you're wearing it throughout the day and throughout the night.
That thing would charge in under an hour.
Yeah, I think the idea is you charge it in the morning.
You're at your desk. You're at work, you jump in the shower for a few minutes, you can take it off for a second.
Yeah, so that's...
I think the idea of charging things overnight while you sleep is, it's kind of convenient because you're not using it, but you just don't need to anymore. Phones charge so quickly and they last so long. And the same with the watches.
Yeah, and they sort of have these multi-day battery life now, so it makes it a lot easier. So they've added that, along with being able to share watch faces. So companies can build watch faces themselves, and then you can just click on them straight from the web and be able to use their watch face and share your own watch faces. They've also added some new dance routines into their workout app, which I personally don't do dance workouts, but to anyone who does, they are there now, along with hand washing. So they've added a hand washing feature.
Very 2020 style.
Very, very 2020 style. So it basically uses the gyroscope to think that you're hand washing, and then uses the microphones to pick up water and soap bubbling, and then will tell you to wash your hands for 20 seconds, which is the recommended time to wash your hands for, to make sure they are absolutely clean. And then if you stop washing your hands in that time, it will tell you to keep going for those 20 seconds, and then it rewards you with a little congratulations, well done, you wash your hands. So it's very 2020, like you say, and I think quite good for the current climate. But who knows if that will be a Apple Watch feature forever now, or if it will be until this all blows over. Who knows?
Yeah, that's interesting too, because they would have stood that up in the past, probably like, 3 or 4 months?
Yeah, they would have pumped that up pretty quick. And all from home, I reckon, the developers.
They've got some very good app makers.
Yes, very, very fast. That's basically watchOS. And to anyone who's interested in or has AirPods Pro, there's some new features coming to AirPods Pro. The ability to automatically switch between devices. So if you're watching a YouTube video on your phone and then you go to your desktop to listen to music, it'll automatically switch to your iMac, and then you get a call and you want to answer it on your iPad, it'll automatically switch. So they sort of teased this when they first talked about the AirPods. It was kind of like, that's kind of how they made it seem like it was going to work. And then when it came out, it was like, yeah, kind of, you have to actually physically switch, whereas now it just seems to do it all seamlessly or all automatically, depending on what device is needing sound. So that's it. Yep, interesting. As well as they're using some very interesting technology around where sound's coming from. So it's trying to mimic like a movie theater. So you don't just have sound from left and right, you also have it from like front right and back right and behind, as well as tracking your head movement compared to where your device is. So allowing the voice of the actor, let's say if you're watching a movie, to always stay where the phone is. So if you're holding your phone and you turn your head to the side, it will keep the sound seeming to come from where your device is.
That's going to be really hard to do. That's pretty much got to be like live. Like you pretty much can't have any latency with that. Otherwise, you start getting almost motion sickness.
It does have to be Dolby 5.1 or 7.1 audio for that.
So you have to have support.
It will work on stuff like Netflix
and the Apple TV Plus. Yeah, so it does have to be certain audio. But crazy. Look, it'll trickle down. I'm sure. And as things also go all the way to Dolby Atmos, so have to keep an eye on that. I might have to buy a new pair of AirPods. Get the AirPods Pro for testing purposes, boys. For testing purposes only. And finally, drum roll, please. We come to macOS. So this was the big last thing, not quite big last thing. The macOS has had a redesign. So it's macOS, and they've changed it from 10 to macOS 11, which is a big update. So they've had macOS 10 point whatever. So yeah, big update. And they've gone for macOS Big Sur.
So they name them after national parks, don't they?
Yes, around California.
Yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, around. I don't quite know where Big Sur is, but I will have a look, and I'm sure I'll be spending a lot of time on the new Google Maps now, looking at where Big Sur is.
Yep, I'm sure their visitor numbers will
I'm sure they will. So I'm not. Yeah, the name is just another name Apple picks, but they've basically attempted to redesign it from the ground up with this idea of, again, cross-platform being integrated in. So they're bringing in the control center from the iPhone to be accessible from your desktop. So this is able to switch off Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, do not disturb, your display brightness. So it's bringing these features that you know and love on your iPhone to the Mac and things like that. They've redesigned all the icons as well. I personally am not a fan of them. I think they were better off with their original icons. They've gone from this sort of flat design icon look on the current macOS to this sort of shadowed out look, which I am not a fan of, but
I actually don't mind them. Like, not that I'm an Apple user, so I'm not going to see them every day, but from what I briefly saw in the presentations, I don't mind the design. It's more of like a curved look now. I don't think it really matches the iPhone or the iPad, which...
It reminded me of the iPad, the new iPadOS. It was sort of like the in-between of that and old Mac.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So they have made all their icons unified now, which is nice. Yeah. So at the moment, they're kind of slightly different sizes, maybe in different shapes a little bit. So they've unified them all to be the same curved box design, which is nice to look at in your, along your dock there. So they've also changed and added all the messaging stuff and changed some mapping things and done some slight redesigns and, just generally rounded everything over across macOS. But the big feature, and we just did an episode on this, boys, is Apple is building their own silicon finally.
No way!
So if anyone is interested, we have done an episode on this before, so check that out. But yeah, they are slowly moving. Starting today, you are able to, as a developer, apply for a developer Mac that runs their silicon to start developing for it. But the first consumer one will be out end of 2020, they are hoping.
So what does this mean for their products over the next few years? Is it a straight switch to ARM in the next Apples, or is it going to be like a process or backwards compatibility with Intel?
They still have a few Intel ones coming out. I think it'll be a slow transition, but
yes,
at the beginning at least, they're still coming out with more. They're still coming out with more.
Right,
Intel.
yeah.
They say 2 years until they're completely, their lineup is all all Apple silicon. They've added a few new development applications to help developers go across to this new architecture, and it's the same as and they've done it before when they went from PowerPC to Intel. So they have done this cycle before, and it's another one of these cycles. It is going to take time, and they are going to try, and they have some things in place to try and allow apps that are supported on Intel to be supported on these Apple silicon chips for some time. They haven't really said how long that will be, but they also said that we're going to continue to support the older Macs for as long as we possibly can. So we will keep pushing updates to them, but eventually we're hoping everyone will be on Apple chips.
I think that's really good because, a lot of those, especially top-tier Macs and MacBook Pros and whatever, they cost a fair bit of money, and you wouldn't be very happy if they just went, right, we're switching architecture, see you later.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, no, so they, and it was only just the other couple of months ago that the Mac Pro came out. So when you're talking about $100,000 PC, some of these top spec ones, you can't really abandon them. No. Those things are going to be probably sitting on people's desks for 10 plus years.
Yeah, how long was it between that model and the previous? Wasn't that like
2013? 7? Yeah, so 7 years. Yeah. 2013 is when the trash can Mac came out.
That's a long lifespan for a computer.
Yeah. So they're going to probably be supporting that Mac Pro at least for that long, I would presume. I don't know if they are off the bat going to have a silicon chip as powerful as that Mac Pro silicon chip. I'm not sure, but they are saying their entire lineup is going to go over to Apple silicon chips. So who knows? But
I think they'd probably be going for a smaller Mac laptop.
MacBook Air will be first.
Yeah, that'll be my low power first.
Yeah,
I think the more exciting thing about the Apple chips, like rather than just power, would be how power efficient they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's where the Mac Air
stuff like standby time.
Yeah, will have the most benefit because the Mac Pros still have a reasonable amount of cooling, and actually Linus Tech Tips did a really good video on this the other day. Whereas the MacBook Air, because they want to get it so light, so compact, they compromise a fair bit on the cooling. And a lot of that is due to the Intel CPU just just overheating pretty much.
Yeah.
Like they can't build a heating solution that's compact enough to dissipate all the heat from the CPU, which hopefully these new ARM chips will be a little bit more efficient in their heat.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other very nice thing is they are adding native support for virtualization. So the ability to run virtual desktops. So this is able to run Linux straight through this new Mac architecture.
Yeah, I think that'll be pretty key. Which will have a pretty good virtual machine.
Yeah, which will be very big for developers, especially. So the other last big thing they're doing is you will now be able to build an app for for the iPhone, let's say, and it will just automatically work on the Mac. You don't have to change it. You don't have to update it. You don't have to use some plugins. It'll just work because it's the same chips, the same architecture. So their lineup essentially is currently the A13 chip for iPhone, the A13X chip for the new iPads, and then it will be the A13Z chip for computers. I don't know if they're going to have multiple tiers for their computers, the i5 for Intel, the i7 for Intel, the i9 for Intel, or it will just be one chip for MacBook Pros, one chip for whatever. I have no idea, and I doubt we'll ever really know the actual clock speed of these chips now and this sort of thing. I think it will be like the iPhone, it will just work.
I think that's a pretty good theory.
If it performs well, I don't know how much there will be to complain about.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, but
specs can be misleading.
Yeah. I think especially now we're getting into this sort of built by Apple for Apple, top to bottom integration. I feel like
we've reached a point in technology now where we have so much power available and we just aren't optimizing it well enough.
Yeah. So I think this
feels like a lot of companies are moving in a direction of just making optimizations through software.
So hopefully this will sort of either be more optimized, so we'll get cheaper Macs, or they'll just be more powerful as well. They'll just have the same power but more optimized. So yeah, but that was WWDC, boys, for 2020.
Wrapped up for another year.
Until September. Until the September event, and then new iPhones.
The hardware.
Yeah, that'll be September. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully we'll see a Mac there. Or it sounds like we definitely will now. So. But we better wrap it up there. Just not so much of a quick episode as I thought, but hey, there you go. Get that one out of the way. But
lots to cover.
But yeah, good to talk to you, boys, and I'll catch you in a couple of weeks.
See you then.
All right, see ya.
Sounds good. All right, boys. See ya.
Yeah.